family and fellow soldiers. I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Oroville, California, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, 1 o'clock p.m. Normally, school shootings are carried out by teenagers or disaffected early 20-somethings, but in this case, we got an exception, and you know it's a sad state of affairs when you talk about a mass shooting and you can honestly begin with the word normally. But when you have a society set up with racial privilege woven into its fabric, brutality and out-of-control violence are the norm. The site of this latest act of classroom carnage is Feather River Adventist School. It's a small faith-based elementary school which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it only has less than 36 students. On December 4th, a man had made an appointment with the school administrator to discuss enrolling his grandchild into the school. This man met with the principal, and the meeting was described as having been cordial, and then the man left. But a few minutes later after the meeting, the principal heard screaming coming from the direction of the school playground as gunfire broke out. Police officers in nearby Oroville, Chico, and Paradise were dispatched to protect Adventist schools in the area. When they arrived at Feather River, they found 2 kindergarten boys ages 5 and 6 years old suffering critical gunshot wounds. They also found the shooter lying on the ground, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. No other people were hurt. After the shooting, deputies sequestered the remaining 35 students in the gym. Parents were directed to come to the church to pick their children up. One of the boys who had been shot was taken by helicopter to a Sacramento hospital. The other child was transported by land. Both were described as in extremely critical condition, with, as the sheriff described it, a long road ahead of them. Police had trouble identifying the gunman initially, but eventually he would be identified as 54-year-old Glenn Linton of Chico, California. Investigators have said that Linton doesn't have any grandchildren, and that was just a cover story he made up as a pretense so he could access the school. Officials found a statement believed to be written by Linton stating that child executions were imposed at the school in response to America's involvements in genocide and oppression of Palestinians and attacks in Yemen. He also said that he was attacking the school on behalf of the International Alliance, but officials have not found any evidence of the organization's existence. Sounds like this guy had a lot of issues and spent a significant amount of time online. Surely he went down a few internet rabbit holes, and this was where he landed. The district attorney said that this incident could be considered a hate crime. That's interesting for 2 reasons. First of all, the man's dead, so even if they do determine that it's a hate crime, what are they going to do about it? And secondly, they're automatically looking for ways to classify this as religious-based violence, even though they have nothing really to support that. Meanwhile, if you kill a black person while screaming racial slurs, the cops are not sure if it's even a crime, much less a hate crime. It was only last week that the school reopened and that the kids returned to class, and for those of you who may be wondering, Oroville is a town with a population of about 20,000. And of course, you won't be surprised to learn that this creep had a very long criminal record, with arrests dating back to when he was a child, according to local investigators, and the FBI, which is assisting in the investigation. Investigators say
Glenn Linton has had several convictions for crimes ranging from theft to fraud and forgery. The Butte County Sheriff's Office says Glenn Linton's first prison sentence was in 1991 for theft. In 2002, the Butte County District Attorney says Linton stole the IDs of a handful of people in the area, making fraudulent credit card charges in their names. At the time of his arrest, deputies found him at a wig shop buying a disguise.
In his car outside, officers did a search after his arrest, found leg shackles, handcuffs, and walkie-talkies. The search warrant of his residence at that time showed, again, some issues of concern that basically found a bulletproof vest and parts for a taser.
Years later, he also pleaded guilty in 2 separate federal cases for identity theft, one in 2016, another in 2015. And in this detention document from his 2015 case, the judge ruled there was a serious risk the defendant will endanger the safety of another person or the community. The document goes on to say the court was concerned that Linton would flee because of a lack of information about family ties, travel habits, employment history, and his mental health.
Linton spent several stints in state and federal prisons for various crimes, including forgery. In the last year, he had been charged with new counts in both California and Arizona. In March, he was accused of stealing cash from a CVS in Phoenix, where he had been working for only a few days. Last month, he was arrested again by San Francisco police on suspicion of being in possession of a stolen U-Haul truck that he got with a forged license, and having an outstanding warrant in San Bernardino County for burglary. He pleaded not guilty, and of course was released on his own recognizance for that one, because of course he was. And by the way, as for that last offense about the U-Haul that he got with the forged license, that's significant because that fake license had the name Michael Sanders on it, which is the same name that Linton used to schedule his phony appointment with the school. As a convicted felon, the shooter couldn't legally obtain a firearm, and it appears that the weapon he used was a ghost gun. Ghost guns refer to homemade firearms that are created by assembling pieces sold together in a kit or separately in order to create a fully functioning firearm. Since it's made from pieces, there's no serial numbers and no way to trace the weapons. In fact, if you've been following the Luigi Mangione saga, you've heard that authorities claim he used a ghost gun in his alleged killing of Brian Thompson. You've also no doubt heard a lot about crime in California, mostly from the white right-wing media, conservative so-called news like Fox. But still, whenever a black man is accused of having done anything, they throw the book at him. Doesn't matter where he is. It could be Texas, Mississippi, or California. And they use the images and stories about black defendants as the pretense to push for laws meant specifically to target arresting black people for little reason or no reason at all. Well, here you have a career criminal, a man who may or may not have had severe mental illness, and yet no matter how many crimes he committed, nothing was ever done about it. And don't let anyone give you that crap about liberal California. I already told you how to shut that noise down whenever someone tries to tell you New York is so liberal. And when some right-wing nut or other tries to say that California is liberal, you remind them that Kamala Harris is a product of the California political machine. And she was the main person that they used to push some of the most aggressive anti-black prosecutorial measures in the state's history. Now, how white Californians deal with each other may be liberal, at least rhetorically and philosophically. But when it comes to black people, California is no different than any other red state, and in a number of ways worse, because at least with red states, people called them out on it. So they have at least some attention on the red states, but California gets to hide behind a phony reputation of being liberal. When truth be told, that only applies to their colleges and universities, and even then, only to the white students and faculty. But California is a tough-on-crime state, at least when they're dealing with black people, especially innocent black people. They're toughest on them. Now, there's something else that also needs to be said about this would-be child killer. 6 months ago, he had been casing another elementary school, Chico Oaks Seventh-day Adventist School. That school happens to be pre-K through 8th. So this guy wasn't looking for a reason to attack, he was just looking for an opportunity. But the real question is, why was he allowed to be on the loose in the first place? Yes, he was a convicted felon, and while he may or may not have been homeless, that's still no excuse for why his mailing address wasn't San Quentin. Because you have black people who have been locked up doing double digits behind bars for less than this guy was caught doing, and the justification for that is, well, we have to get tough on crime. I mean, we're not being tough enough on crime, which of course means we're not being tough enough on black people. But the reality is that things like freedom of movement and immunity from the laws are the principal white skin privileges that white supremacy bestows on those classified as white. And because of the fact that you got to be able to hold a group together with goodies, giveaways, and guarantees, you got to keep those perks in place. That's the part that doesn't get talked about. And this is what it leads to. This is the price of a society that selectively practices color-coded law enforcement. But as we've pointed out time and time again, this country long ago made the devil's bargain with itself that it would pay this price. This evil that dare not speak its own name, but as the black media, we have to have the moral courage to say it. Because while this country habitually wants to be very angry with these mass shooters, as it should be, the main thing it needs to do is to take a long, hard look in the mirror at why it keeps letting these things happen over and over again, setting it up over and over again. Because if the dominant society wants to be angry with someone, they need to save some anger for themselves. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: David Williams, Charles Thompson, Keitha Dixon, Kenneth Johnson, and Seven Samion Ham. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.